Welcome back to the People of Penn State podcast. I'm Katie Farnan from the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'm so excited to be joined today by Chef Danielle Sepsy, aka the Scone Queen, a 2012 hospitality management grad. She's the founder and creative genius behind the Hungry Gnome, the popular and innovative wholesale bakery and catering company located in New York City. Danielle's career has taken her many places, including television appearances, especially Dan Levy's The Big Brunch on HBO Max, and she's gained social media stardom where fans flock to platforms like Instagram and TikTok for recipe inspo. Danielle, welcome to the pod today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And we are.
Penn State. That's a great start.
It's so exciting.
So let's start from the beginning. Why did you choose Penn State?
So actually, I'm from Long Island, New York, and I didn't know anyone that went to Penn State, unlike my husband, who's from Pennsylvania, and tons of his friends went there. But I didn't really know much about it. And it was actually my dad that said, Penn State has an amazing hospitality management program. And I was looking at schools that only had hospitality management. And so I went to look at the school, and I really fell in love with it right away. However, I actually almost didn't go, and I'm so glad I changed my mind, but I actually sent in my acceptance letter to NYU. And then last minute, I said, this doesn't feel right. I am from New York and I wanted a change of scenery. I also thought Penn State just had the quintessential college experience, and New York City wasn't necessarily going to give me that. And I had a feeling I'd end up in the city after college. So that was part of it. And then also I talked to a lot of people in the hospitality industry, and many said that the Penn State program was just fantastic, had been around a long time, had great networking opportunities. And my gut just told me, okay, I have to change my mind. So I went to school one day with an NYU shirt and then changed my mind. And the next day went with a Penn State shirt. And I'm so glad I did, because it changed my life in so many ways. And I don't know if I'd be where I am today without it.
We're biased, but great decision. So tell us a little bit about your experience when you're here. What were you involved in? Kind of what led you to graduation?
At Penn State, I was pretty involved. I was involved in the Penn State Hotel and Restaurant Society, which is kind of the club for the major. I was also in a club called PCMA, which is Professional Conference and Meetings and Events Association. So I always thought I'd do some sort of event planning when I was at Penn State, and I joined that club, and that was a great experience because we got to travel and go to the annual meeting for that organization. And I got to make really great connections with people in the meetings and events world. And then I also was in a sorority. I was in Sigma Kappa sorority, where I met my best friends, who I'm still best friends with today. Through the sorority, I was involved with a lot, including our philanthropy, which was the Alzheimer's Association, which fast forward to today, that is near and dear to my heart. Actually, my grandmother, who taught me how to bake, she passed away from Alzheimer's about 8 years ago. And it was so nice that my sorority, that was their philanthropy. So I got to do a lot of charitable work with them. And I still do so today. Actually was the MC for the walk in Manhattan in Central Park this year, which is really exciting. Besides that, trying to think what else I did. I was very social, as Penn Staters are. Went to the football games. I met my husband, which we can talk about at some point if you'd like. There's funny stories with that. Sorry, my oven is beeping. Yeah, but I was involved in a lot and had a pretty heavy class schedule. I ended up studying abroad my junior year also, and went to Florence, Italy. And that was an incredible experience too. And just pretty much spent almost 5 months eating my way around Europe, studying too, but mostly eating. And it was a really amazing cultural experience that I recommend to everyone. What else? Yeah, studied hard, of course, too. And then thankfully my senior year, actually in December, so really right before the second semester of my senior year, I ended up landing my first job. So that gave me a little bit of security my last semester. And I ended up getting a job at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, which is one of the most iconic historic hotel properties in New York. So yeah, that's kind of my experience.
So tell us how you met your husband, because I love a Penn State love story. It ends with Valentine's Day just a few weeks ago. Like, this is a good time.
Sure. So my husband, whose name is Daniel, which is pretty funny. So now we have almost the same exact name. Um, we lived in the same, so in Pollock Halls, in the dorm buildings right across the quad from each other, in the same room, ironically, so we could actually see each other from the window. But that's not how we met. We realized that after the fact. But I used to see him all the time in the Pollock Commons and whatnot. I don't know if it's still there, but the little kind of deli convenience store on the first level called the Mix. I would see him there, and he's really, really shy. We're opposite personalities. And I used to see him, and he always caught my eye. And I'm an outgoing, bubbly person. I would kind of smile, and he would kind of look away. So I was like, oh God, this person hates me. And I kept seeing him. Fast forward a few months later, and I ended up at an apartment party, I think at like Beaver Terrace or one of those apartments. We had a mutual friend, and my now husband was there with his friends, and he started talking to me, and he brought up, his opening line was something about Greek Sing, which at the time, I don't know if they still do it, but was like Broadway performances done by sororities and fraternities, and it was a competition. And he said something like, oh, I remember you from Greek Sing. You have an amazing singing voice, whatever. So that's how we started talking. And then a few minutes later, I was leaving with my friends. He stopped the door from closing like in a rom-com, and he said, can I have your number? And I said, all right. I gave him my number. And then I turned to my best friend, who's still my best friend, Gina, and I said, some ginger kid just asked for my number. And now we're married. But we went on our first date at the Penn State, I forget if it's on College Avenue or Beaver Ave, but the Taco Bell, because we both have a guilty pleasure for Taco Bell. I'm obsessed with it. So we bonded over that. We ended up having Taco Bell as our first date. And now it closed, which is so sad. But that was like just a quintessential like college date at a Taco Bell. It's like pretty amazing. But now we've been together for over 16 years, which is so crazy to even think about. We've been married for almost 6. So yeah.
That's a great meet cute. Very rom-com. All right, so let's get into your baking. So you started baking from a pretty young age. Tell us about how that kind of evolved.
Yeah, I grew up in a big Italian family, and everything was about food and just planning the next meal. And that's kind of, food really brought us together. We always had big Sunday dinners together at either grandparents' house, either my mom's parents or my dad's parents, every weekend. And I had a grandmother, Rosemary, who I mentioned before, who passed away about 8 years ago from Alzheimer's. But she was an amazing baker, and she always, every time we went to her house, she'd have something spectacular baked for us. And when I would sleep over their house, which actually I now live in that house. So I live in my grandparents' old house, which is full circle. But she used to bake with us. So I had an obsession with Martha Stewart even at a very young age. And actually my grandmother bought me a Martha Stewart magazine subscription for Christmas when I was 8, and a KitchenAid mixer. And so I would go to her house, and I would show up with the latest Martha Stewart magazine and say, let's make this. And we'd always make things together. We also watched the early days of Food Network together. Julia Child, we obsessed over her, and we'd watch her every weekend together, and Jacques Pepin. And she just saw how much joy baking and cooking brought me, and she'd always buy me so many new cooking and baking tools. And I then, at a young age, kind of started having really bad anxiety. And when I was probably about 10 or 12, is when my anxiety was really at its worst. And baking really brought me this sense of control and focus and a calming effect, because it was a real distraction. So you had to be so precise. And I think my grandma really saw that it had that effect on me. And so my family really encouraged me to keep baking. And then when I was 13, I created my scone recipe, which is actually the same today. And I made a whole bunch of scones in my parents' kitchen, and I presented them to them on like a cutting board. and I made them try all the flavors, and they said, wow, these are the best scones we have ever had. You really should try to sell these. So while everybody else, when they were 13, was going to camp or playing sports or swimming in their pool, I started a business, and it's really, it was everything to me. It was so special to me. I would wake up at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I am an early riser anyway. I'm a morning person. So, but that's pretty early for anybody. But I would wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, bake off the scones, and then my parents would deliver them on their way to work, because obviously I couldn't drive at that time. And I started a little business. So I made a little business card on Microsoft Paint by hand. I drew a logo. I did the whole thing. I had my parents' landline phone number on it because I didn't have a cell phone. And I would just hit the pavement and go to local shops and bagel stores and things like that and bring samples. And by the time I would come home from my little sales run, I would have voice messages on my parents' voicemail box saying that they were obsessed with the scones and they needed to sell them. And so all summer long for a few years, I would make scones and all different baked goods, also specialty cakes, decorative cakes and fondant cakes, things like that, and sell them in my town and to family, friends, etc. And I always knew that it was my true passion and that that's what I really wanted to do as my career. But I'm so grateful to my dad, especially, who, said, you're really, you do great in school. And I think, yes, you have the baking and the cooking skills, but you need to know how to run a business, and you need to get a degree in hospitality management and really understand how to run a hospitality driven business. So I went to Penn State to do so, and I'm so glad that I did. I mean, everything, I learned everything from accounting to whatever, business management, and then some courses like 430, HRM 430, I think it is, which is when you run a restaurant and it's your concept and you have to do the costing and the staffing, and it's really like running a real restaurant for a few nights of a semester. Those were experiences that were so valuable. And I think because I had that great business knowledge and foundational knowledge, I was able to run a successful business today. And, also they encouraged me, my parents, to get a job. I could have tried to start the business right after Penn State, but I don't think I would have succeeded. It's so important to build relationships, learn from other people first, sometimes make mistakes on other people's time. That sounds bad, but you gotta make mistakes, and you gotta learn, and you gotta take time, and you can't rush things. And so I spent about 10 years working in hotels and then an event company. And it was so valuable. I think even just learning how to manage different types of people, that was crucial to my success today. And understanding a P&L statement and looking at the financials, and that was really important. And actually, it's funny, I struggled in accounting at Penn State. It was not my thing. But once I was in the real world and could actually apply it to my real life, then I had a clear understanding. And so, it was a 10-year journey, and then I was able to start my business. Sorry, this is a very long-winded response. I don't know if you want me to go into how the business started, but maybe you have another question to ask.
So before we get to that, because I am going to ask that in a minute, but you said you worked at a bunch of different hotels, and you actually were laid off, and that kind of set a whole redirection in your career. So tell us about that and how you kind of took that negative and turned it into where you are now.
Yeah. So in 2020, 1 month before the pandemic. So a lot of people think it was because of the pandemic, but it wasn't. I worked for a corporate meetings and events company as a general manager. I worked there for 4 years. Had a great experience. I think I was really successful there, but it was a kind of a startup type of company that was going through a period of growth. And they decided that they wanted to try to hire somebody cheaper, and it just comes down to money at the end of the day. And so they eliminated my position, and actually my colleague, who's one of my best friends still today, they eliminated our positions, and just the company policy was that you couldn't even like work a final 2 weeks and just kind of close things out. They didn't want to do that. So I literally was called into a meeting. I thought it was a good meeting. I was smiling, and my boss was like, "Can you sit down?" And I'll never forget that feeling. My heart just sunk. And and they told me that they were eliminating my position. And within about 15 minutes, I was on the corner of Park Avenue and 30 something street. I forget. And I was crying. It was raining. It was like out of a movie. And I called my mom and I said, "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I just lost my job." And so I felt really sorry for myself, because no one wants that to happen to them, and especially when you have no idea it's coming. But then I went home, and my husband said to me, "This might be the push that you need." At the time I was doing my baked goods still on the side as kind of a side hustle, and it was starting to grow, and people were starting to ask for them more and more. And I wasn't really able to do it at the capacity I wanted to, because I had a full-time job. But I was afraid. I was afraid to take the plunge, as many are, especially when you live in a city that is so expensive. And my husband's job couldn't support both of us to live in Manhattan. So, there was a lot on the line. I was really nervous. And so thankfully, I was able to get my bonus paid out to me and everything from the job I got laid off from. So I got a chunk of money, and I said, "Okay, let me save this. Let me try to start the business." And then simultaneously, COVID was happening. But then actually, sorry, rewind. The night that I lost my job, I started emailing coffee shop companies in Manhattan that I loved, such as Joe Coffee. So Joe Coffee has about 26 or 27 locations today. And they're really well respected in the Manhattan tri-state area. So I emailed the founder, and this is, I always tell people, just go for it. And my mom's tip for me, and the saying she says over and over and over, kind of her motto is, "If you don't ask, you do not get." So that always runs through my mind. And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to email the founder, and I'm going to find his information through LinkedIn." LinkedIn is a great tool. I messaged him. I said, forget like going through other managers, whatever. I'm just going to go right to the top. So I emailed the founder, and I said, I had a baked goods company, which really barely existed. And I said, "I would love to bring you samples," told him a little bit about myself. And he responded within a few hours. And he said, "We've had long-standing relationships with our vendors that go over, 10 years. And I really don't think we're looking for any new stuff, but you know what, bring samples and we'll go from there." So within 3 days, I brought samples to his office and dropped them off, and he wasn't there at the time. And I left, and hours went by, I didn't hear. And then at maybe 8 p.m. at night, that night, I got an email, and I saved it. And actually a blurb of it will be in my cookbook, which we can talk about later. But it said that in the, I think, 18 years he had been in business, he had never had better baked goods than what I had brought him, and that he had to sell them. So really, the same day I lost my job, the same week I lost my job, I got my first wholesale customer, which had at the time 20 coffee shops. And I had no commercial kitchen. I had no employees. I had nothing but great recipes and a dream and a will to do this. And so then COVID was simultaneously happening, which for many was awful and heartbreaking, and caused their businesses to close or have a rough period. But for a lot of food companies, especially bakeries and companies where you could ship, they did well, because people wanted to ship things to their loved ones, or they just were sitting at home eating themselves, which might have been a problem for many. But I said, okay, Joe Coffee told me they had a few months where they were going to be closed because of the pandemic, and it was perfect for me. Everything was aligning. It was truly. I am so lucky that the pandemic happened when it did, because if my clients were at their full capacity at that time, I would have never been able to handle it at that time, because I was just figuring it out. How do I even run a wholesale bakery? How do I even distribute everything, get it from A to B, do it in this large of scale? So it was scary, but I had 4 months to kind of get myself situated. I ended up hiring people that lost their job from the pandemic. they had been cooks and chefs, etc., some of which had worked for me in the past. So never burn bridges, really foster your relationships, because you never know how people can help you later on. But people joined me and they believed in me, and we started making the baked goods. We found a shared commercial kitchen in Long Island City, Queens, where you can kind of pay by the hour and then pay monthly for your storage. And also they're bigger facilities, so you can kind of grow within them, which was really great for us because we weren't tied to a long-term lease. And we didn't know what the growth really would be. And then I was able to just get myself situated. So then by July of 2020, the coffee shop started to reopen. I started to hit the pavement again. In the beginning, especially the first year, I was going out doing all the sales calls, bringing samples in a bag, saying, hi, I make these baked goods. I'm from the Hungry Gnome Bakery. And, that's how it really started to grow fast. And I think it's also so important to remember that people buy people. They loved my baked goods, but they also liked my story. And it was great to have me there presenting them the baked goods, because I think it really created these relationships and put a face to the name, and people felt really well taken care of. And so it started to grow really fast. And then thankfully, I signed on with a distributor who I'm still with today, who has an online platform where basically coffee shops, restaurants, hotels, things like that can go on this platform and say, okay, I would like blueberry muffins. They do a search, all the vendors that they work with that have blueberry muffins come up, and then they can request samples. And so we will send samples to those customers. And then now that helped us get from 20 something coffee shops to now we're over 300 stores and counting. And we even sell to JetBlue Airlines and make biscuits for them for their first class. So it's just continues to grow, and it's been quite a journey, but I'm grateful for the timing just happened to work out. And I think truly everything happens for a reason.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. We love to hear that. You actually answered my next question, so we can keep just going down the line. So where did the name The Hungry Gnome come from?
The name The Hungry Gnome came from my older sister. I have two sisters who I'm really close with. And growing up, my older sister, Christiana, had an obsession with gnomes, which was kind of funny. And so she always collected gnome things. We had little gnome statues and soap and blankets and all random gnome things all around the house because of her. And when I was coming up with the name, the logo, I thought that would be a really cute logo and branding. And I'm so close with my family, so it was kind of a little nod to her.
That's so cute. So you've appeared on several shows. I want to get these right, so I'm reading them here, including Anderson Cooper Live, Good Morning America, Inside Edition. What's it like to see yourself on these shows that thousands and thousands of people are watching?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it was something I always wanted to do. I love to entertain. I love to teach people how to cook. And it's just always been a passion of mine. And as a young kid, I would record myself pretending I had a cooking show. And it was kind of always my thing at a very young age. And I love to watch cooking shows. And so, when I first started, I had the drive to do it. I was so excited to do it, but it's extremely nerve-wracking. And when it's live TV, which a lot of them are, like when I do Today Show, Good Morning America, Good Day New York, all those, they're live. And there is such a small time frame that you have, maybe 4 minutes sometimes, to do 2 recipes. So you have to talk, you have to really manage your time well. You have to cook and, talk at the same time. So a lot of time, multitasking. And it's very nerve-wracking. So in the beginning, it was kind of this love-hate. It was beforehand, I was so sick to my stomach and so anxious. And I was like, why am I doing this to myself? But then once the camera started rolling, I loved it. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's an odd feeling, but now, I'm so grateful to have had so many great opportunities to be on television and work with so many amazing people. As you mentioned before, I was on the show, The Big Brunch on HBO Max, and That was a 5-week filming in LA, and I met so many amazing people who I'm still super close with today. And those opportunities have helped take my business and my career to the next level. It's helped me gain credibility, just obviously exposure, getting my name and brand out there. And the big brunch, especially, my online sales for my bakery, because we ship nationwide, those sales that year grew almost 5,000%, which I didn't even know was a thing. So, it can be really transformative and really just catapult your career, but you have to be ready. Also, it's crazy. I mean, I didn't know if I'd be able to handle the growth, but thankfully I hired more people. I kind of prepared for it before the show aired, in case this did happen, and it did. And so I felt like we were set up. I mean, there were days where it was really all hands on deck. I had my family members, my mom, my sisters, whoever coming to help, bagging, scone, doing whatever. It was definitely a all hands on deck situation, and at times felt really uncomfortable and nerve wracking, but we got through it. And I'm so grateful for those opportunities. I've gotten to meet some really amazing people, and it's so weird. Still, I kind of have imposter syndrome because I'll be, grocery store or walking down the street in New York City, wherever, and I get stopped quite a bit, and it shocks me, because I'm like, I sometimes people are looking at me, and I'm like, are they looking at me? And then they're, oh, I saw you on that show or whatever. And people are so kind, and they have such amazing things to say. And it's just always shocking to me that people even know who I am.
Well, if people haven't watched The Big Brunch, which they should, because it's one of the more relaxed cooking competition shows. You guys were all like friends and carrying each other's dishes to the table. It was not like Top Chef vibes at all. It was good vibes all around. So just tell us about that experience and what it's like, working with Dan Levy and the David Rose, talking to you and eating what you're making.
Ew, David. No. So that experience was life-changing in so many ways. And there were 10 chefs, including myself, from all over the country. We were all so unique and different. And but we all had this love for food, and also a nature about us that was so positive and encouraging and supportive, and nobody was cutthroat, as you were saying. And it was really a positive, well-intentioned show. And I think when they were finding the people, they were looking for that. And I think that made it so special, because I think a lot of the other cooking shows and competitions, they're hoping for as much drama as possible to make it as exciting to watch. But I think this was so engaging and fun to watch because it was the opposite, as you said, and we supported each other. I mean, a lot of people always mention to me in the last episode, so sorry, spoiler, I was in the finals, and in the last episode, Daniel, who ended up winning, he beat me, but it's okay. He was so talented. He was scrambling to finish, and he was having a rough time in the final cook. And I stopped and I said, hey, can I help you for a few minutes? And Jay, who was also in the finals with us, was the final 3. We were helping each other, and people just couldn't believe that I would take my precious time to do that. But that was just the way it was. There was no question in my mind. It was not about the competition. I forgot about the money, and there was $300,000 on the line, but I never really thought about it. It was more of a personal journey. I felt myself getting better as a chef. Really having time to really reflect on my life and my career, and really grow as a person. I learned so much for all these other unique individuals that I was with. So it was a really it was a growth journey, a personal growth journey for us, for everybody. And Dan Levy was amazing. I mean, he was a part of the casting too, which was a really long, grueling process. People don't realize that, but it took 4 months. So it was everything from timed cooking tests to interviews to psych analyses. you name it, we had to do it. And it was really long. And there were a lot of Zoom calls. And what I didn't know until I made it onto the show was that he was on those Zoom calls, but he was not in the picture, which was kind of cool. And he decided, who he was going to choose for those final 10 chefs. And then when we got on set, it was like I had known him for years. He felt like a friend, and he cared so much about us. And, even behind the cameras, when the cameras were off, he would always check in with us and say, hey, like, how's this going? Because this was a new show for him too. He wanted to make sure we were comfortable, things were going well. And it did. I mean, even the cast, the crew, everybody was so lovely, which I don't think is the case for a lot of shows. They were so lovely. And I would sit hours a day with a producer. You have these behind the scenes interviews, these confessional style interviews. You do that for a few, like sometimes 2 to 4 hours a day. You're in those interviews. And I just felt these people were so amazing and encouraging and special that I felt like we became a family. By the end, I was so sad to leave because I was so close with everybody. I still am today. But now I call upon my fellow chefs. We always will use each other as a resource. We've done pop-up events together. Dan Levy is such a supporter of my bakery, the Hungry Gnome. Every time he's in New York, he asks for some goodies. So I send them to him, or even when he's home in LA, I'll ship them across country for him. He has them for his family Christmas brunch every year, which is wild because I think about Eugene Levy, his dad, and his sister, Sarah Levy, all these amazing actors just sitting at the holiday brunch table eating my stuff. It's just wild to me. But he's super kind and supportive and has really helped me over the past couple of years since the show came out. So yeah, I'm really grateful.
All right, let's talk social media. So you have hundreds of thousands of followers. I am one of them. I will plug that.
Thank
if you're
you.
not following Danielle, you should
Thank
be.
you.
She posts a ton of recipes and inspo, and there's some Penn State notes in some of the videos that you post. So tell us about, rising that social media stardom and seeing people following you and interacting with you and commenting on your videos and saying, I tried this recipe, it was delicious. Like, how does that feel?
Yeah. Social media is a roller coaster, to say the least. When I came back from filming the big brunch, I decided to invest in my social media. And so I hired Chris, who's still my manager today, to help me edit, produce, come up with concepts for social media, just so I could have great content for when people start following me for the first time, when that show aired, that they would be like, oh, wow, like let me follow her. They'd feel more inclined to follow. So I did invest some money and time for a few months to do that. And I think it was a really great move because when the show did come out, my following grew tremendously. But it's a journey. It requires a lot of hard work, obviously, creativity, consistency. So this is actually my content day. So every Thursday I work from home. So between emails and meetings for the Hungry Gnome, I'm filming content. And then I have my social team editing, posting, creating a schedule. But when things hit and they go viral or they do well, it's such a great feeling. It's exciting. It's kind of like winning the lottery, honestly. You never know when it's going to happen. And when it does, it's amazing. But then there are times where things just plummet and it just, you have a period where you're just not doing well. It's all about the algorithm. You never know. So it has ups and downs, and it's kind of like you feel like an actor that's like an A-list actor that then has like something happens and they're forgotten about. You feel like a has-been. And it gets like, it kind of becomes, it hurts your self-esteem a little, which I try not to let it affect me, but it's so much work and time. And when you put this creativity into these things and then they don't do well, you're like, oh, but you just got to know it will ebb and flow. You have to be patient. You have to be consistent, as I said, and just stay true to you and be as authentically you as possible. And I think that's really important because when you're not, people don't buy into it. You need to really just be you because that's what makes you unique. And it took me a little time to really understand that and figure out what my community was on social media. But it's really fun. And I've met I think I get recognized on the street just as much from social media as I do from my television work. And when people make the recipes and they post photos or videos showing the final product and that they're enjoying it, that is why I do this. I love to teach people how to cook. And when people are successful at making my recipes, it's the best. And knowing that they're sharing them with their loved ones and having this time together, like I did with my family every Sunday for my Sunday dinners, that is what life's all about. So I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to help kind of orchestrate these special moments for people through food.
What's been your most viral video, if you can think of it off the top of your head?
Yeah. So I had a really good stint in July this last July, where I had multiple videos go viral, and I don't know what happened, but it was crazy. And I was gaining thousands of followers a day. And it was because of a few baking recipes. One was the Olympic muffin. So if you don't know about this, long story short, during the Olympics, in the Olympic Village, there were these double chocolate muffins with this chocolate ganache inside. And a Norwegian swimmer was posting videos about them every single day, him eating these muffins, funny, voiceovers and like clips from movies playing in the background where he's eating these muffins and he's like, going crazy for these muffins. So my my social media manager's intern, she saw these videos, and I'm so grateful for her. Her name is Sam. And she said, Danielle, you have to make a copycat version of this muffin. So you have to be fast with these things to be the first. And so I'm so glad I was on top of it. And that same day I made the video, my team edited it. We posted, I think, by the next day, and it ended up going viral. I forget how many millions and millions of views it has now. But what was so great was people were making them all over the world, and it was so exciting. And then it was getting media attention. So I was getting calls from all different news outlets. I got interviewed for all different, online publications, from like Fox to Inside Edition, whatever. And then I was on Good Morning America, and Michael Strahan and all the anchors and Robin Roberts, they're all sitting there eating the muffins. And it was just such a great experience. And because I own a bakery, I said, here's another opportunity to monetize this. I started selling the muffin, and we were selling tons and tons. I mean, hundreds and hundreds a day, and we still sell it because it's so popular. So that was probably my most successful one, I'd say. And then I also did one for this coconut cake. So Tom Cruise, I don't know if you know this, but every year for the holidays, he sends a coconut cake from a bakery in California to all his friends and loved ones and colleagues all over the country. And this has been talked about for so many years. He's been doing it for decades, I think. And so I made a copycat version of that, and that also went viral this past summer. And people make it every day. I get tagged in posts every day for that cake. So super exciting.
Those muffins look delicious, by the way. When we were on your website, my coworkers are all around my screen. We're like, which one do we want the most?
Oh my God.
So you mentioned earlier that you are in the process of coming out with a cookbook. Can you tell us about that journey, what kind of led up to it, and how the process is in writing it and publishing it?
Yeah. So I always wanted to write a cookbook from the time I was really young. I love to read cookbooks. I found it really therapeutic. I collected them. As I mentioned before, I had Martha Stewart magazines and everything. And so I always knew that was something I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I was on The Big Brunch that right after a literary agent was interested in signing me on. And she specializes in cookbooks and has a really amazing repertoire of clients and books. And so I ended up writing a proposal with her. So you basically create a proposal. What is the book concept? What are some sample recipes? Who are you marketing this to? Who's your audience, et cetera? And then the agent goes out and pitches you to a bunch of publishers. And in the end, I had, I think 5 or 6 amazing publishers vying for my book, which was an incredible feeling. And I was just like, I felt again like imposter syndrome. Like, is this really happening to me? And I had to basically interview with all of them and sell myself and my book. And then they go into a bidding war for your book, and they offer you, they give you an offer, which is your advance. And so I had a few different ones to choose from, but I kept thinking about Knopf Publishers, which Knopf was the publisher that published Julia Child's book. So Mastering the Art of French Cooking, her famous book that's sitting on my shelf over there. That was one of my favorite books, and it's iconic. And Knopf just had these authors that I idolized, everybody from Julia Child to Lydia, if you know Lydia's Italian Table, and so many more. Smitten Kitchen, which is an amazing blog that I've been following forever. And so I said, this just feels like a classic publisher where these are books that are timeless classics that you're always going to reach for. And there was something to that felt really special. And so they ended up being the ones that I chose. And it was just such a match made in heaven. And then I had about 1 year to write the book. So you're writing all the recipes, testing all the recipes, you're writing the head notes and doing the full manuscript. And many people have a ghostwriter. Many cookbook authors have a ghostwriter to help support them during that writing process. But I really wanted to do it myself. And I'm so proud of myself for doing it because I'm running a business simultaneously. But I wrote the whole thing by myself because I wanted it to be super personal and really tell my story along with the recipes. And so it took about a year to write. And now it is in the editing and design process, and then it'll come out a year from now. So it's March 2026. It's been a long time coming, but I'm so excited. And it's truly, like I said, my life on paper. A lot of my secret recipes that I thought I would take to the grave, I'm sharing. And I'm so excited to do so because I can't wait to see everybody making them. And then I'll go on a book tour. So maybe I'll come to Penn State.
As you should. Yep. We'd be happy to have you back.
Awesome.
I love a good cookbook. I'm really excited for this one. What's the first recipe that I need to try when I get my hands on the cup?
Oh, okay. So the famous scone recipe is in there. So I highly recommend trying to make, especially the chocolate chip scones. That's one of my favorites. Another one that I absolutely love is the French toast monkey bread. So it's a take on monkey bread, but has like a maple caramel. It is to die for. And then there's like some really good kind of top heavy crumb cakes, as I call them. So like crumb cake where it's like 3/4 crumbs and then a little cake. That's how
the best crumb cake.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some really fun crumb cake recipes in there that I make time and time again. So I hope you guys make them and enjoy. So yeah.
I'm sure my coworkers listening to this will be like, Katie, you're bringing that into the office. So I will.
Thank you.
So after the cookbook, what's next for you?
Wow. So, a lot of people will say like, is there ever a ceiling, will you ever stop? And my answer is no. I'm that person. There's always so much more to do. And it's not that I'm not satisfied. It's just, I'm so goal oriented and there's so much that I want to accomplish. And so I plan to write more books. I plan to continue to expand the Hungry Gnome on a more national level. So whether that be items in national grocery chains or I have some other things in the works with some other, like with hotel brands and things like that. So continuing to grow the Hungry Gnome, I think has been just growing for the past 5 years, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I hope it really does become this national brand like an Entenmann's or a Sara Lee or something like that. I mean, that would be definitely a dream. So growing the Hungry Gnome, more books, and then hopefully more television opportunities. I recently filmed 2 episodes of Beat Bobby Flay where I got to judge for the first time, which was really exciting. It'll take a while for them to come out. They have a kind of a large backlog of episodes, so it may take 2 years to come out. But I really enjoyed judging, and so I'm hoping to do more of that. And who knows, maybe even have my own show. That's always been a dream of mine, and I have some fun concepts in mind. So who knows what will happen. But yeah, just continuing to do what I love, which is bake, cook, and teach people.
I'm excited to see where the journey takes you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we like to finish things up with a quick lightning round of some
Cool.
Penn State related questions. So I've got 5
Okay.
Penn State questions here and just quick answers.
Okay.
All right. So your favorite creamery flavor?
Death by chocolate, by far.
Easy one. Your favorite Penn State sport? What's the first sport you're getting in line for tickets for?
Football, for sure.
Easy. Your favorite class or professor when you were here on campus?
Favorite professor, Dan Mount. He was it was like the introduction to hospitality management class. And he was my professor. It was one of my first hospitality classes. Everything he said just really resonated with me. And now he is a customer of mine and orders my baked goods. So kind of funny. And he just always stuck with me. I really liked him. And then favorite class would be HRIM 430, which was the class where you ran a restaurant, because I really love to do hands-on things like that. So I thought it was really worthwhile and was fun to do all the different jobs from dishwasher to general manager to chef, whatever. So I thought that was a really valuable class.
Other than the downtown Taco Bell, what was your favorite local restaurant in State College?
I still think about this today. Well, 2 things. One, Wings Over, the honey barbecue boneless wings with ranch. Like, still to this day, think about them. And I realized on Long Island, there is a Wings Over, and I've had it
Full circle.
twice. It's not as good as the Penn State one, but maybe it's because I'm eating it sober, but
different experience.
So and then I love this sandwich. I don't even know if they still make it, but Champs makes this sandwich called the Sandy Koufax, and it's an eggplant sandwich with goat cheese. And my best friend from Penn State, Sarah, and I always used to get it. Such a weird thing to get at a sports bar, but it was delicious. And we both think about it all the time.
I'm pretty sure it's still there, honestly.
Okay. And I really would love to go back soon to get it because I'm thinking about it.
And then lastly, who would be your dream Penn State dinner guest?
Ooh. Like someone that went to Penn State, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Ooh, this is tough.
This is the one that always stumps people.
I know. Maybe Saquon. Let's give it to Saquon.
Same.
Yeah, good one. No Saquon.
All right, Danielle. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really fun conversation, and I've enjoyed talking to you today. You as well. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for listening, and yeah, hope to see you on social media. Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, Danielle, for joining us today. And if you're interested in learning more, you can check out her feature in the Penn Stater magazine, the May-June 2024 issue. For everyone watching or listening, we hope you'll join us next time. Find us where you get your podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Special thanks to our guest relations coordinator, Abrielle Clark, our producer, Vincent Lungaro, for their work on this episode, and a special shout out to our graphic designer, Gabrielle Harris, for creating an amazing rebrand for this season of the podcast. We are